bit about yourself, your background, and why you chose to engage with the peace process or not?
Yeah, I'm from this community where we are now in North Dublin in Drumcondra, and I was very much I was born into a house where my father was a former Republican from the old IRA when back in the troubles in the 20s. My mother was Republican background as well, and both of them moved into Fianna Fáil back in 1926. So they moved into peaceful society, politics by peaceful means. But they would have remained, very staunch Republicans, supporting of Republican values, of United Ireland, and that would have been the kind of a home that I was in. But when I got involved, when I was in school, and I was interested in more, civil rights, equality, what was going on in France and the Czech Republic and Ducek, the revolution there, the civil rights in America. So in the 60s, when my final years in school, we were very much, all our debates were on kind of civil rights and Martin Luther King and all the issues that were going on all over the world. So, and in those days, students, were fairly militant. It's not like today where students are, by and large, very conservative. I mean, they think they're militants, but they're only in the, as we say in Ireland, in the halfpenny place compared to generations that were before them. They only have protests now during college hours. When we were young, they used to go out on the weekend. But so I would have taken a great interest in the civil rights movement in Northern Ireland, which was basically from the mid 60s. It was about housing inequality, about gerrymandered constituencies, about lack of educational opportunities. And it was very much, while the British government are blamed all the time, it wasn't totally their fault. They left the administration of the North to the unionist dominated society in Belfast. And, I think if they had have engaged with nationalist Republican people in those days, there never would have been the conflict, but they didn't. And when the protests started, then they started using physical force. So it was a very, like most conflicts, it was avoidable, but the wrong decisions were made. And then, of course, when I was elected in the 70s, you couldn't but be engaged in what was going on in the North. And I took a great interest then. And I suppose right through the 70s and the 80s, it just got worse and worse. So I think I because of where I was in Dublin, a lot of the people that I was dealing with, a lot of my constituents were from all parts of the country. They were from the north, the south, the east, the west. So invariably, I started seeing that we need to try and find solutions. Instead of the war going on and the conflict going on and the troubles, as we call them, it was to try and see if there were solutions. So within my own party, within Fianna Fáil, in the late 80s, the conversation started about, what can we do to try and find a solution. And it started when Charlie Haughey was the leader of the party. Not much happened that time. Then Albert Reynolds gave great impetus to it. He was the Prime Minister in the early 90s. And then that was followed by me. So I think it was very much number one item, because it was affecting the whole island. It wasn't only affecting Northern Ireland, it was affecting everything. So it was very hard for me to avoid it. So that's how I got into it.
The Good Friday Agreement, or the Belfast Agreement, has marked a significant turning point in Ireland's history, and we all observe that. In your views, what has been the most profound impact of the agreement on society over the past 2 decades?
Well, I think that when Tony Blair and I were back in 94, 95, when we were planning an initiative, our view really was not the detail of the initiative, but was how we could stop the violence. The whole priority was, could we stop the killing, the bombing, the mayhem, the terrible plight that people were living in. Young people couldn't go out at night because it was dangerous. Old people were afraid to go out in the daytime, and it was just the whole community was poisoned with violence, violence, violence. And it didn't really matter where it was coming from. It was coming from all sides, and whether it was state violence or whether it was paramilitaries representing loyalism, unionism, republicanism. It was affecting everybody. Of course, some people were involved in it actively; others were totally opposed to it. But it was crippling society. So, I think the big change that the Good Friday Agreement made was that it practically, for all intents purposes, it stopped the violence. There's been more people killed from drug crime in my own constituency in Dublin than has been killed in the north in the last 25 years, with the exception of the Boma bombing. So, I mean, the violence has stopped and hopefully never start, but that's why it's an ongoing process. That's always the way. But I think that was the big thing. So everything else comes from that. It was to stop the violence and then to try and find a political solution. And the Good Friday Agreement set out the terms of that. And for 25 years now, which is a generation, it's been up, down, very good years, very bad years. But at least it's politics, at least the recent election in the north, I found very satisfying, not necessarily the results, and I don't have any comment on the results, but I found very satisfying that most of the debate that I saw on radio and television, and even the manifestos that they produced, were about issues. It was about education, it was about health, it was about infrastructure. It wasn't about violence or, any of the issues of the past. And it wasn't much about the constitutional question either. So I listened to the main 4 or 5 debates, and I timed the constitutional issue. It wasn't raised in 3 of them, and it was under a minute in the other 2. So it wasn't really hard to time. so that was a good thing. It was about health and how bad the health is, but that's everywhere in the world. These are the issues that. So I get good satisfaction when I see the politicians fighting over the everyday issues and not fighting over, the other issues. So I think it's, but we never need to be complacent. You never need, because the world, the problems of the world tells us that, everything is an ongoing process. And it's when you get complacent, it's when you have trouble, then you go into reverse. So I think with the Northern Ireland peace process, we all the time need to be thinking of ways of going forward, improving things, trying to improve reconciliation, trying to get people to cross the line to meet each other. And these are very hard issues. These are hard, but they're very necessary issues, because until those issues are resolved, and they do take a long time, and we know that down here. I remember the Civil War ended in 1923 in Ireland. And I remember when I was a young TD, that's a member of our parliament, a man from Kerry whose father and grandfather had been very involved in the Troubles back in the 20s. He said at the meeting that I detect in my constituency, he was talking about North Kerry, that the Civil War is over. This is 1978. So I think we all need to realise that these things take a long time.
We touched base a little bit about peace process in Northern Ireland, and this brings to the next question, which is, what do you consider to be the biggest resistance or challenges to peace building that we have overcame?
Yeah, I think the problem is that when you get into identity politics, it's us or them, it's black or white, it's red or white. We've had this down through history, whether it was the Indian community in America, or whether it's been the racial problems from South Africa. There's a tendency. I've read many books about conflicts in other places, and sometimes you're reading them and you believe that it's the same issues, where people they build up, over hundreds of years, hatred and bitterness, and it's been passed on from generation to generation, why you shouldn't like someone, why you should take a different view, rather than the fact why you should, intermarry, or why you should. Well, and we're only now in Northern Ireland starting the process where it's acceptable in society for people from different religions to marry. We're only starting that process. I've met a few people this year who've been married, and they said it was all good humoured and good jokes in their community, but for a long time that wasn't acceptable, so reconciliation is still the solution to these problems. Your question is, what is the challenge? And the challenge is that if we can't reconcile, the unionist tradition with the nationalist tradition, that they can all live, together and work together and participate together, and be able to celebrate their events. And like the two big things in the north every year is the orange parades, and this time of the year, where nationalists don't take any part in that. They don't come out to support it. Thankfully, they don't come out to throw stones at it anymore, but they don't support. And then St. Patrick's Day, which is kind of missed over by the unionist tradition. Though that's beginning to change. I was at St. Patrick's Centre down Patrick this year, and I spoke there, and it was good to see that there were people from both sides, not many from both sides, nearly all one side, but that was beginning to change. The man that's in charge of it now is from the Protestant religion, so that's a particular progress. So, but we're a long way from getting people to to really participate together and really reconcile their differences. And the difficulty about that is it only takes one match to start a big fire, as we know. So one thing can go wrong, and then we have a terrible problem. And we're not near the stage. We haven't made the progress of the last 25 years. We made brilliant progress in ending the conflict in terms of violence, but we've made poor progress, in my view, in real reconciliation. That's the answer to your question. I think that's the challenge for the next generation of politicians, and it's a worry.
On a more personal note, what examples of leadership inspire you most regarding the peace building process in post agreement Ireland?
I think it's probably the same in Ireland as it is in most other countries. I mean, I think the world's in a difficult place now. I mean, I think the remainder of this decade, and probably into the next decade, but let's say over the next 10 years, like we're talking in 2024 now, but I think from now to 2034 is a difficult decade. American politics is everybody is at everybody's throat. It's poor, and leadership, in my view, is poor on all sides. I think we have Iran that wants to be a superpower, and they've militia in several countries that are causing trouble. They have a lot of responsibility to take for what's happened in Gaza. And that region of the world is not in a good place. So I think we've in Europe. Europe, we're now getting into what I never thought we'd see. We used to have capitalist socialists, now we're into to far left, far right, whatever they mean. Not too sure what they mean. And then centralists. If you have common sense, I think you're a centralist. I think the other two, I'm not sure what they are. So we're into a difficult period, into a difficult political period. And quite frankly, I don't think there's a huge amount of great leaders around. I think they're all lovely people. I don't want to say anything bad about any of them, but as far as showing, collective leadership, strong leadership, the kind of leadership that was shown by Helmut Kohl in Germany after the East-West came together, or you know, what Nelson Mandela showed in Africa 30 years ago when he got out of prison. I don't see I don't see those kind of leaders hanging around today. I hope they surface. Um, I don't care if they're young or old. I don't care if they're 28 or 88, quite frankly. But I would like to see, consistent, peaceful, you know, leaders who have the ability to see both sides of an argument and try and bring people together, avoid conflict, try and look for improving society for people where people can have a good education and hopefully have good housing and be able to, live a life to the full. Not what we're seeing, which is a world of conflict and difference and difficulties. And I think the next decade, I hate saying this, but I think the next decade is democracy against autocracy. That's going to be the name of the game. I'm on the democracy side, and I know autocracy is in different cultures, different places, but if democracy want to play the game with autocracy or autocracy want to play democracy, I wish they could do it in a more peaceful, safe way than the way I think it's going.
And finally, looking ahead, what elements do you think are most vital to peace building?
I think for people trying to get on with each other, I think what Tony Blair and I succeeded in doing was creating a platform where people of different sides, different cultures, different political parties, people who were prepared to fight for their cause militarily, paramilitary groups and others, that we created a platform for them to try and deal with issues through politics. And I think that's a good thing to do, where people, they're not killing each other, and they can deal with political issues in a political way, peaceful way. And I think that's been the good thing. We have to keep it that way. Yeah, have to keep it that way. But I always think about policies and politics generally, and there's politics in everything. I mean, politics, sometimes people think politics is for elected politicians, but there's politics in the medical profession, there's politics in the legal profession, there's politics in the teaching profession. So politics is just where people, work together and participate together and try and find mutual solutions. It's not about people winning the battle, It's not about the Margaret Thatcher line, if I win, that's the right policy. The name of the game is trying to bring people together and then find a good solution. Not a perfect solution, because that's never possible. We don't live in a utopia, but where we try and get a common position where people can accept that. And I think that's what I'd like to see for now and for the future. And that's what I've spent most of my life working for. We haven't got a perfect solution, but we've got maybe a more peaceful one. And hopefully, as time goes on, we'll even get a better one.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.